How did a once introverted programmer go from coding in a cubicle to leading an iconic American brand? Well, that's exactly what Omaha Steaks CEO Nate Rempe did. And along with CEO Forum Group founder Robert Reese, they're your inside source for magical hacks that will transform the way you command a room, command your career, and maybe even command a company. Get ready. This is Brain of Command.
Hi, Robert Reese here, and today's leadership hack is Simon Says. That's a fun one, Nate.
It is. You think about language. I mean, language is a powerful tool. You imagine going on vacation to somewhere overseas and being able to speak the language. The inclusiveness happens almost immediately. I mean, people invite you into their space. And so today we want to talk a little bit about how that translates to American business and how learning the dialect and understanding how that fits into the culture can actually give you a level up.
And our guest today is Jim McCann. Most people know the name. He was the original founder of 1-800-Flowers. Today, it's over, I think, 18 companies. But Jim, when you talk about language, you took 18 brands and combined them so they're seamless in a way. What is your thought on how you create alignment using language?
While we have 18 different brands categories, there's alignment between them in that they're all giftable products. So we started out with our flowers, obviously, and we've added gift baskets. And then what we did, Robert and Nate, is follow our customers. So if you would imagine in a perfect downtown USA, oftentimes there'd be a big, beautiful flower shop there, and it would have a lot of other things in the shop besides flowers. It would oftentimes have greeting cards, it would have chocolates, balloons, plush, and other giftware. And that merchandising mix changes throughout the year. So at Mother's Day, which is in second Sunday in May, it would be heavily skewed to floral and balloons and things like that. A month later, for Father's Day, it would have a different mix, be much more of an emphasis on gift baskets and chocolates and things like that. Perhaps even a gift of a twin filet mignons, who knows? What we've done over these many, many years is follow our customer and say, what other gifts would they like to buy for different people or different occasions that we didn't carry that we could carry to help them in their connective experience?
I love that. Here's the idea behind Simon Says, Jim, is if you use the right words, you can really influence, a group of people inside a company. And this language gets created inside organizations organically. And in fact, one of the phenomena that happens is you actually kind of subconsciously start to adopt the language of the people you work with, particularly those that are highly influential. If you can be cognizant of that as an up-and-coming leader and learn to not so much parrot it or copy it, but to use it in your own style such that the dialect that you're using in meetings, if you're presenting, is compatible with the organization's language, it will fall on ears more graciously. You'll be accepted more. And that can be in social environments. That can be when you're talking about, financials or the mechanics of the business. I think what Robert was getting at is, you've got these 18 companies and each one of them, probably has their own language and their own dialect, yet, you've got an organization that connects across those companies. So how does 800-Flowers and its respective entities really develop that and speak that consistent language across the various businesses? And does that happen, intentionally or organically or both?
Well, I think you're guessing at the answer there with your last comment. It's we'd like to influence the culture of our companies. We can't control it, but we can influence it. And how do we influence it? We influence it with our behaviors as leaders, which is which things do we tolerate, which things do we reward, and what things do we punish? And vocabulary is an important thread throughout all of those ideas.
Yeah.
But as I said, we can't control it, but we can influence it. And vocabulary is the most important tool we have to try and influence our cultures. It seems to me every company, every industry has its own nomenclature. But language is something, and I'm continuing to learn this. I'm an old dog, but I still learn new tricks all the time. And I think back to some of the leaders I've worked with or gotten to know in some respect. And I worked on a board of a global insurance carrier, a broker, for a long time. And our leader there, our CEO, is a fellow by the name of Joe Plumeri. And Joe is a very effective leader of salespeople, Wall Street brokers at Smith Barney Shearson over many years. And then when he came to the insurance industry, he brought a lot of his knowledge that he developed in his Wall Street career to the brokering business. And a big part of that was vocabulary. And he was very specific about it was important to own our vocabulary. And I learned so many good lessons from him. It was an amalgamation. It was a conglomeration of a bunch of different brands in the insurance space. And at one point, he decided we can't, there's confusion about what is our brand. And so he took all of these brands and said, we're going to go with Willis as the global brand, the one flag. And so he made up the term Willis, one flag. And he encouraged everybody to wear a pin on their lapel that said Willis. And he did that, they operated globally. And he was really deliberate about making sure we had one brand, one flag, one set of rules, one way of doing things. Now, that took years.
Yeah.
To people stop referring to the U.S. business as Caroon and Black, which it had been. But he made it such an emphasis and made such a show about it that eventually even the recalcitrant fell in behind it, and almost with a smile on their faces that we're one brand.
Language can pull together a culture. It's kind of it can be
or
the
tear it apart, Nate, right?
Yeah, or tear it apart, exactly. And it can be the thing that, some common ground, right? And I just find it so interesting that, as a CEO, you can pick out those people in an organization that are influential in how they speak. And they have learned to use the language of the business to work a room, to get people to understand what they're trying to get across. One of the analogies that I was telling Robert, I play live music and I play other people's live music. I play in a cover band. So I'm not writing the music per se, but I'm performing it in my own way. And I think that's really applicable to those people listening, thinking, okay, how can I use the language of my organization to influence others or to have an impact, a bigger impact than I am today? And it's really this idea of adapting that language to your own style. I think it can really kind of cut both ways. You can come off as trying to mimic, which I think has the opposite effect, rather than using your own style and sort of applying, in this case, the Nate-isms to that language of Omaha Steaks. I think really allows.
Is that Nate or innate?
Nate-ism.
Ooh,
Yeah. Good question.
Like that.
Good question. But you see what I'm saying, right? Which is, apply your own style, don't copy. Instead, pay attention and figure out when's the best time and moment to use the language in your own style to get your influence across.
You remind me of a lesson I was just taught recently by two of my favorite people. One is a board member of Flowers. His name is Adam Haft. He's a really, really smart guy. And the other is Dr. Angela Jackson, who is a newer friend the last few years. She's a doctorate in psychology, teaches at Harvard. And she just came out with a brand new book that's just terrific about culture and workplace and how things are changing as a result of the technology you're unleashing on all of us, Nate. But both of them made the same point to me in conversation, and that is, if you want to know who has the influence in a company, and the influence is granted influence based on position, the other is influence that they earn regardless of their position. And when something happens in a company, watch the traffic. Watch where people go, and Adam called them the cultural touch points. So they may not be the highest ranking people, but it's a person who 5 or 6 other people are gathered around by magnetism when something shocking happens in the workplace, when they want to convene and get some interpretation and feel connected.
We are about to take a commercial break. While you're waiting, we are going to talk a little bit about a book called Lodestar, Lodestar. And Jim mentioned certain other great books, but you want to look about that. We're going to hear about that. And then when we come back, we're going to talk more about how you learn from different people and advance. Back in a few. We'll get back to the show in just a minute. First, I want to talk about the holidays. As an executive, I understand how critical it is to recognize your top performers, reward loyalty, strengthen your most important business partnerships. That's where Omaha Steaks business gift services teams come in. They help leaders like you create unforgettable moments backed by over a century of guaranteed quality, service, and trust. They even have choice certificates so your recipients can choose their gift. And don't worry, they also have vegetarian options so nobody gets left out. Plus, when you order before November 1st, you'll lock in an extra savings and a $350 gift. Just go to omahasteaks.com/CEO and lock in your $350 gift today. Minimum purchase may apply. See site for details. Hi, this is Robert Reese with Nate Rempe on Brain of Command. Our guest today is Jim McCann. We interview the CEOs who have reinvented the fabric of America. And Jim, we're talking a lot about language and about things that make a mark. And I remember the first time I interviewed David Novak, who was the longtime CEO of Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Yum Brands.
He had, yes, Yum Brands, which had Taco Bell, KFC, and
Pizza Hut.
Yeah. He's a great guy too, right? You know him well, I'm sure. And so he always talked about one word, which was recognition. And he had a funny way of showing it, which he would give this rubber chicken award. And it wasn't exactly words, but you knew the word recognition. If you gave recognition, people would love that and they would love to get that. Now, in your book, Lodestar, you wrote all about the different areas, the different books you could learn from, the different people. We're talking about language now and things that are memorable to people. Share something from that book that weighs into this conversation.
Listening to you, I'm reminded of us being deliberate here, and we've spoken a little bit already today about being deliberate, intentional. And there was a young lady who was just returning to the workforce about 20 years ago. And she came to work with Patty and I here at Flowers. Patty's been my longtime assistant. Her name is Katie Seville, and she worked for us for a couple of years part-time as her kids were just getting old enough that she was ready to go back to the workplace. And she's had a tremendous career across the insurance industry and the consulting industry since. But one of the cultural ingredients that she brought to us was I was struggling with wanting to influence our culture by wanting to, we talked about you can influence your culture by what you tolerate, what you reward, and what you punish. And I wanted to reward and recognize people who were doing things that I thought were exemplary and contributing to a very positive customer-centric culture. And but I said, Katie, I want it to be ownable. I want it to be something that people would know it's ours. It's the Flowers Company's ownership. And she came up, because I had been writing notes to people, and she said, why don't we formalize these notes that you send every once in a while when you hear about or see or come across some behavior you think is exemplary? And she said, why don't we, and you know the term kudos, so we said, why don't you call it cultural kudos? But cultural will spell with a K, so it's ours. And we've been doing that now for this 20 years since that she helped formalize something we were doing anyway, but now made it ownable and deliberate, and we brought it to everybody. So everybody in the organization can send a cultural kudo to somebody else. And it happens all the time. We do a monthly town hall, and we always have the closing section of the monthly town halls is what we call our cultural kudo section, where we call out 3 or 4 or 5 of the most interesting cultural kudos that we're awarded during that period. I love when I walk into an office I hadn't been in some part of the country in a while, and I see all these paper printouts of cultural kudos that are pinned up around people's desks. It just helps us to say, these are the things we value. These are the things that we want to shine a light on. These are the little things and not so little things that make us different and make us who we are.
One of the 11 magic hacks that we'll talk about in episodes later is really knowing how to brag, that there's a right way to brag and a wrong way. Complimenting others, sort of being gracious with your words is really effective in building allies, which ultimately, no matter whether you're 1 week in or 10 years in, developing allies is a key portion of being successful. And there is no better way to do that than using the right language at the right time.
It goes back to using your power.
Right, exactly.
Heard just a week or two ago, a lady who's an expert on language and body language and facial expression talk about a study by Dr. Van Sloan. And I'll boil it down to what I understand of it that is the heart of it, I think. They did studies in schools about who the most popular people were. And what they did first was ask everyone to make a list of all the people they liked in that class. Every single time, the most popular person in that class was the person who had the most people listed on their paper as people they liked. In other words, people like people who like them.
Yeah.
And that's the person who'd walk down the corridor and say, hello, Bill, hello, Tom, hello, Robert, hello, Diane. They were busy. Hello, hey, how are you? Love that dog I saw you with over the weekend. That story. They liked people. And so invariably, they were the people who were the most liked because they gave the most. It's just a common theme that the people who have, and we talked about it in Lodestar. My partner in writing the book Lodestar is Dr. George Everly, who's just a brilliant man, and I'm proud to say a good friend. We only met at the beginning of COVID, and we were a couple of years COVID buddies, and since now obviously gotten together in person a whole lot of times, but never enough. But what I learned from him quickly was that the difference between optimist and pessimist. I guarantee you everyone who was on that list of the most liked was an optimist. Optimists are only 20% of us born. Only 20% of us are born predisposed to optimism. 80% therefore aren't. But the good news is, as a result of what I learned from Dr. George Everly about neuroplasticity, the fact that our brain is changing all the time, if we're deliberate and intentional, we can change what percentage of us are pessimistic. It's easier, by the way, to be pessimistic.
Sure.
Much easier. We can change through deliberate behavior and practices our tendency to be one or the other, to be more optimistic. And why would you want that? Well, scientifically, optimists are healthier. They have more friends. They have more and better relationships. Happier, much happier. They're physically healthier.
Yeah.
Measurably physically healthier. So why wouldn't you want to be an optimist? And the answer is you can be. And in Lodestar, we go into some of the tools to do that. And so if we can change our brains, maybe we can be at least well-liked, if not the most liked in our class, by giving more from that bank account, using your power to change how someone else feels just by looking them in the eye, saying hello, remembering their name, asking them about an event they were going to a couple of weeks ago and checking in to see how did that event go. Did you go to that concert? Hey, Mr. CEO of a company, how was that Coldplay concert you went to recently?
How timely.
You say. On that note, I do want to say thank you, Jim, for being a fantastic guest on Brain of Command. And everyone remember, when you go into an organization, when you're there, think about Simon Says and the actual language that will elevate you quicker. See you all next time.
Think carefully about the words, mannerisms, and concepts used by influential people within your organization so you can build an effective vocabulary to establish influence. Take a deeper look at today's hack with the Brain of Command companion guide at omahasteaks.com/podcast. Thanks for listening. Join us next time to learn how identifying insiders can help you build influence beyond your position. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and tell your colleagues that you're hacking your career with Brain of Command.